Thank you. Thank you, Priyal.
The next is Miss Nikita Panchal, who's currently working as Global Head Talent, OD and DI at ACG World. Ma'am is an executive coach and a global leader with HR experience of over 18 years. She has worked with reputed organizations like Tata Asset Management, Motilal Oswal Securities, and many more. Ma'am is an alumnus of Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University, USA. She's a certified coach from International Coaching Federation, Leadership That Works, USA. She's certified as an OD practitioner by Indian Society for Applied Behavior Science. She has been awarded with various accolades throughout her career, including the Economic Times, the Great Managers Award 2020, People First HR Excellence Award, TISS Leapwall CLO Awards, and so much more. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thanks, Purva. Really looking forward for this conversation. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Ravi Hemnani from Siemens. Ravi, sir, is currently working with heading the Learning and Development Global Learning Campus at Siemens India. A passionate learning and OD professional, having an excellent track record in the domain of learning, leadership, talent, and capability development. With the ingenious expertise in his domain of work, he has been constantly innovating and creating disruptions in the way employees learn and grow. Sir is an alumnus of Symbiosis Institute of Management Studies and has diverse experience working with companies like Dell, Nokia, Schneider Electric in various capacities. He is also a visiting faculty and speaker in many top B schools and management forums. His contribution has won various local and global awards like PML Manjul, Golden Peacock, Brandon Hall, AIMA, Leap Vault, and many more. We welcome you, sir.
Next, we have Mr. Sandeep Magavi, who is the GIC Learning Lead for Growth Platforms and Industry at IBM, where he leads efforts to consult, strategize, and execute strategic upskilling and reskilling frameworks that enable the organization to scale capabilities across cloud, cognitive, industry, and other new age skills. He comes with a strong background in learning and development. Sir is an executive alumnus of Indian Institute of Management Kashipur and has worked across various organizations. He has a rich experience of over 20 years in the industry. Sir also has a strong commitment to give back as a Be Equal ambassador and supporting neurodiversity within IBM and outside of it as a board member of an NGO. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Purva. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me over.
Next, we have Dr. Jagatheesh Jayanand. Sir is currently heading the Learning and Talent Development at Bosch, India. Prior working at Bosch, he was associated with Accenture, Wipro Technology, L&T, NCC Siemens, and many more. Sir is an alumnus of Algappa University and has completed his doctoral work on building competency models post his master's in management and bachelor's in mechanical engineering. His research interests are in the area of personal mastery through leveraging concepts from ancient wisdom. Sir spends time with learners from management institutes and delivers learning interventions on design thinking, innovation, learning, and competency building. We welcome you, sir.
Next.
Thanks, Priyal. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Next up, we have Mr. Shiv Rawat, who's currently working with working as the AVP National Head HR for DTDC group of companies. He has 22 years of diverse and enriched experience in logistic, supply chain, e-commerce industries. Sir is a management graduate in human resource CPHRM from XLRI Jamshedpur and has worked in various HR domains like personnel verticals, IR strategies, learning and development, policies and organization structure nationally, and seen it in one particular unit. He has been awarded with 101 Most Fabulous HR Leader of India by ET Now and WHC and Headhunter Extraordinaire. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Purva. Nice to be here and looking for more learning.
Next, we have Mr. Prateek Malik. Mr. Prateek Malik is currently heading the Talent Acquisition and Strategic HR at DSV Global Transport and Logistics. Sir has around 13.5 years of work experience in the HR domain. Prior joining DSV, he was working with Satyam Computers, Make My Trip. He is an alumnus of XLRI Jamshedpur and has worked on various projects in talent acquisition mergers and acquisitions, creating mechanisms for internal compensation benchmarking, campus engagements, representing the organization in GPTW survey, conceptualizing HR policies, and various other initiatives. We welcome you, sir, and we request you to take the session forward.
Thank you so much, Priyal and Pooba. I welcome you all. I've been given a very tough job in terms of moderating some of the elite panel, the list of group members that we have. Just to give a little bit of a background on myself. Of course, thanks, Priyal. So I have been in the HR domain for about 13.5 years. Last 7.5 years have been heading talent acquisition for DSV. Not sure whether guys would have heard about this company or not, but I'm sure my friend Shiv would have heard, being in the same domain of logistics and supply chain management. And specifically in the supply chain management, we cater to a very small niche industry called freight forwarding, which is again pretty niche when it comes to supply chain. So that said and done, I was just doing a little background work on the guest of the panel that we have. So we have about 130 years of combined HR experience on the show today. So I'm really looking forward to it. Perfect. So the theme, as we said, it was as was told to us, it revolves around the learning and development. It revolves around competency-based learning. It would also be my honor in terms of asking questions with whatever little experience that I have for the elite panel. So last 1.5 years, we've all been in a situation which is like we've heard so many times the new normal. I've kind of got bored of this term now. It's absolutely, it has actually changed the way of working, that what we used to be and how we are currently working in this kind of an environment. But having said that, certain companies, certain industries had the infrastructure of a work from home scenario. Certain industries, certain companies did not have that kind of an infrastructure that made them to think about this, and certain companies and industries are still kind of trying to figure out their way in terms of how do we get along this environment. So the first question which I would like to put it up to the panel would be, in these last, say, about 1.5-2 years, what has been the one learning intervention that you guys have done in your organizations, and what really went well? So I'd like to start with Debashish. If you can just give us that one, just for the starters, just one learning intervention which over last couple of years Berkadai has got in place, and what really went well with that initiative.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. First up, Prateek, and good evening, everyone. Very happy to be here and learn from all of you today, really. The first thing that comes to my mind, Prateek, is that we all got trained on how to use technology. I myself never used a Zoom or Teams or all this other technology in this last 20 years almost. Now, here you go. We're all living our life in this technology. And I think most of our employees were not trained in it. So first thing what we did was to get people accustomed or acquainted with the technology and making sure they start using it. They start using it effectively. I think that is also very, very important, right? So that was the first intervention we did. It was very early in the COVID times, might be more than a year back. I think a lot of success. We realized it was very important for us to get everybody on the same page as far as technology is concerned, especially people like us and not the youngsters. because I still consider myself not very tech savvy, but my employees are very much tech savvy. That was one. Another thing that worked very well for us, I would say, is one intervention that we did. I think our first intervention online, and we were not sure if this would ever work because we never done this, is a training intervention for the frontline managers of our IT team or the innovation team. These are a group of people who are taking up people roles for the first time. They never done it in the past. They're all technology-based people, have been individual contributors. Now, all of a sudden, they're given this role of managing people. This was a big challenge for us, especially because you're doing it online. But I think it went very, very well. Couple of reasons. I don't want to really take too much time, but we did a few things which was basically co-creating the entire program with the stakeholders, right? Right from creating a mentor for a particular module to having a coach, a leader as a coach for every module, right? For example, if I had emotional intelligence as one of the modules, I had one of my top leaders who became a leader as a coach, sharing his or her learnings on the session, right? Secondly, one of the leaders from innovation who was good in EI was a mentor, right? Because learning does not even happen only in the classroom. It happens actually after, when you start applying it. The third thing that worked well in that whole program was the fact that what we realized was that we should not believe that L&D teams only can create great content. We actually crowdsource content within our organization. Within some of our managers actually build the content for us. And they did an amazing job, right? Of course, we help them, counsel them, consult with them at those finishing touches to bring that kind of an ADDIE model, or so to say, in technical terms. But we are living in the assumption that we only can create content, they can. I think when they create the content, it is more relevant. The examples are of the floor. The examples are really business-like, which any external trainer can't give you. So those have been some of the great success stories that we had on this particular program.
Great, Debashish. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely second that, because in our organization, we also came up with a knowledge exchange program. We called it as a KEP. So very well said when you say that, the content which the actual managers on the floor can make, it's very difficult for even an L&D person. Of course, the collaboration needs to be there, but it's very difficult. If for external, it's very difficult, of course. And for an L&D professional also, it becomes a little difficult because that hands-on touch doesn't come in. So very well said in terms of the points. Nikita, if you can share some inputs from ACG worldwide. I mean, what was that one breakthrough intervention these last couple of years that you or your team could do in terms of L&D?
Thanks, Prateek, for holding this space and having my voice into this inquiry. In fact, as you asked this question, there are many interventions that pop in my mind, but I'm going to make a conscious choice at the moment and speak of one which is extremely close to the level of impact that it has created. As we moved into the lockdown and then eventually got into the format of working from home, one of the biggest realization that we had as an organization was that one unanimous culture that we tend to create as an organization, because we're all together under one roof, working together with common systems, processes, norms, suddenly got bifurcated and fragmented to many subcultures because everybody was at home and there was no one entity which was holding all of us together. And that's when we realized that the role of the managers becomes extremely important in the entire value chain, because every person at a given point of time is only interacting with another person who he or she is working with, and not necessarily interacting with the entire organization, which the earlier privilege was. So the kind of culture that you experience is now going to be the culture that the manager creates, not necessarily what the organization creates. Yeah, there is a bit of a domino effect or a collateral impact that the organization can influence, but the manager has a higher opportunity in creating that culture. So when we moved into the lockdown, we created, and we are still kind of strengthening that piece. is how do we really work with all our people managers to help them create a culture of mindfulness, a culture of well-being, a culture where there is trust, there is empowerment, where there is support offered given the times that we're living. And the beauty of the entire program was that it not only enabled people to relax a bit, because you also get to build an environment that you want to thrive in, but it created multifold productivity. So we are doing much better than any other year pre-COVID, all in terms of performance, profitability, revenues. And I think that was only possible because of the sheer empowerment and trust that we immediately started building as we moved into the lockdown. And this program played hugely in the entire process. What happened as an outcome of it is that when we then launched the next initiative, which is the well-being initiative, we realized that people wanted to customize their well-being offering, which means each person wanted to then tailor make what is best suitable for it. So what we started off as a role of improving managers and helping them being the good link for culture creation moved into further progressing to helping each individual decide what is the development journey that he or she wants to take up. So that's the empowerment that is offered as an outcome of this initiative.
Wonderful, very profound lines, I must say. Culture that the manager creates. I mean, in this scenario, when the HR team or the major population of the organization is not in office, so the first person that comes to your mind is your manager. So some very good thought on that, Nikita. I'd like to move on to Ravi, Siemens technology giant, focused on mobility, infrastructure, healthcare. A company like Siemens would have not found, I think, that kind of a difficult scenario, Ravi?
Well, you rightly said, from a technology perspective, we were there. We had already moved from classroom to digital in a big way. We were actually preparing for it even before the pandemic hit us. So for us, it was more like blessing in disguise that we have the pandemic now and we just need to promote it. And it was easy to promote because people anyways wanted digital. But what, going back to your question, what different did we see was the amount of innovation that we saw in learning we never saw before. The kind of innovation in terms of design of the program, the content, the different types of trainings that are being delivered. And today, as we stand, I would say 100% of our classroom trainings are either done digitally in a instructor-led method, or we have gamified them, or we converted them into simulations, or they're blended. And the impact that it is creating is a lot more than what it was in the past. So definitely digital has worked very well for us, and possibly we have traveled the journey in 1 or 2 years which we were expecting to travel in possibly 4 or 5 years.
Wonderful. I'd come back to one point you mentioned beautifully, Ravi, on the gamification part. I think that was something which the tech companies could do a little better than some of the companies who were on the non-tech side. So I'll come back to that point in the course of the discussion. Great. So Shiv, I can relate to more in terms of the industry experience that you might carry. So how was it for DTDC in terms of implementing some of the L&D initiatives in these last couple of years?
So Prateek, first of all, thank you very much to the IIM Kashipur, allowing us to be in this forum to learn from the giant and the young leader who are there to listening us, right? When it comes to learning interventions, Prateek, and you being in the industry, you must be knowing that this COVID era, logistic industry has also been identified as one of the essential services, right? And when you say essential services, right, it is very important that how you can manage a team in the ground where people don't want to come out from the home. That was very critical for us. We as an organization is actually known for the experiments, and we do a lot of experiment. So one of the experiment which we did in 2019, I would say that we launched a program called Step by Step. And the step-by-step program was, and those who understand logistics, there is one of the function which is a major function works in the organization, which is the last mile function, where maximum number of people work in the ground. So if you see my total strength of employees, say 11,000, 70% people are there in that function works in. And those people are already there and they are very lower category. But when you talk about other category of people, those who comes under the white collar category, we decided to train them on the last mile processes. So if I am in HR, I have been trained on first mile, last mile, middle mile, similarly for customer care, IT and other function. And the thought was that if an emergencies comes, can we utilize these people who will be available? And we were not knowing the pandemic is going to come. And the pandemic hit us. And the biggest issue as a logistic company, or I am sure a lot of company has faced it. Many companies went for a work from home culture where no intervention was required to be on the ground. But for our kind of a company, we cannot go immediately for 100% employee to be work from home. So it was very difficult to bring the talent in the ground, difficult to bring the last mile people in the ground. So what we did, if we were requiring 4 or 5 staff in the ground, we started identifying that who are these 4,000 people who knows that how to operate in the ground. And we started picking up these people and they went to the ground and they supported during that period. So this was one of the intervention which we did in 2019 has given the result to us in 2020 perfectly well. So there are multiple ones, but I feel that this is one of the biggest intervention which we did has helped us a lot in the pandemic.
Sure, Shiv. Thanks a lot for your inputs.
Thank you.
Jagatheesh, if I may come to you, heading the L&D for Bosch, again, tech giant in terms of mobility solutions, in terms of consumer goods. So what was that one L&D initiative that really worked for you guys?
So thanks. Thank you very much, Prateek. So in terms of, if you could ask what was one thing that was very critical for us is how to manage teams and people virtually. Now, when I say teams and people, it doesn't just include people in the organization. It includes people outside the boundaries of the organization. It could be our channel partners. It could be our associates who were out of the immediate network of the organization. So that was something which was critical for us because everything was going remote. So one such intervention, how to work with teams virtually, how to lead teams virtually, helped us and our people a lot as we moved ahead through this pandemic. And another intervention, which is not immediate that I had an experience of with Bosch, but just prior to joining Bosch, because this is my 7th month in Bosch. So I come from a tech organization and from a product organization. So in terms of
Panchal, I believe was the last.
Yeah. So what we did there was again a scenario where we had 5,000 fresh graduates inside the organization who were learning, and we have 5 days to move them all remote. That was a challenge. So, and a lot of learning there. And how do we move this kind of a size scale remotely, and then again make sure that the learning doesn't stop, because that becomes a pipeline which gives which feeds into a business. So these two things, one is from Bosch, how do we lead teams virtually? I say, and how do we work with our network virtually, be it our channel partners or be it whoever it is, to a older experience of, you just have 3-4 days, you cut and you again restart, you have 5,000 people who should start learning remotely and complete tech learning remotely. It should happen without any flaws. So these are the two experiences, I would say.
Great. Last but not the least, coming to Sandeep, IBM, again, one of the best organizations to work for in technology, a lot of young people, old people, experienced people. So how was it for you, Sandeep?
Yeah, in fact, I was just listening to all my friends talking here and a lot of inputs from them as well. And similarly, Prateek, what we first did, there have been a couple of interventions from, March of 2020 and all through 2020. So it's not the new norm anymore, like you mentioned when you started. But what we really did in terms of actually rolling out was a virtual collaborator enablement, because that was what was very important for us in terms of how do we really enable people to collaborate, because we have deliverables, we have our engagements, we still want to continue the innovation and the conversation that's happening. And all of a sudden, everyone's working from home the world over. Of course, we've always been connected, almost every organization, obviously, we've been working with overseas teams. But this was a big change because you're not really working with immediate teams, managers, you're not having a coffee with your leaders. So it's none of that, right? So even from the nitty-gritty of all of those things, I think the virtual collaborator one was something that really helped us. It's not just a question of tools, but it's a question of, etiquettes as well, in terms of how do you really bring in your online presence while making your presence felt, right? So it was a bouquet of enablement bundled into a virtual collaborator batch. So I think that was something that really stood out for everyone, helped everyone. And even for, we had something specific for trainers as well, because all of a sudden, of course, it was a blended approach all the while, right? It's perhaps only 20% that was classroom and everything else was online for us. But to actually have even the trainers, because we do have a lot of external trainers as well. So it's our external partners. So we all had to come together in terms of how do we really enable trainers, whether internal or external. How do we get the platform completely, scalable in terms of, from a perspective of training. So we had to bring in all of these small pieces together to kind of fit it in. And I think we were able to do that. So from Q3, I would think, Q3 of 2020, in more ways than one, I think it was business as usual for us to a large extent. Of course, obviously, can't call it as 100%. It's still not. It never will be, because you do need to have those face-to-face interventions to make it 100% effective, right? There are certain elements of consulting, there are certain hackathons, for example. All of those, you actually need people, right? So it never is going to be 100% for anybody, right? But I think we've kind of reached that over a period of a year.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, companies like IBM, of course, they people working there. I mean, of course, they have a bent of work from home, because there's a hybrid model always running. I mean, I believe it's been running since many years now. Yeah. So that transition wouldn't have been that difficult when it compares it with some of the non-tech organizations.
Yeah. So it just happened a little too quickly, right? I mean, it wasn't really spread out over a period of time, but otherwise it was okay.
Great. Cool. So we've got some inputs on some of the L&D initiatives over the last couple of years that some of the leading organizations had. Majorly, it was difficult for them to kind of move on to the virtual platform, training the managers. We often use an L&D train the trainer, concept. So that might have been implemented in many of the organizations. Moving on to a little different, arena. Of course, we'll remain in L&D itself. So whenever we talk about L&D or whenever we talk about initiatives of learning and development, there's always a ROI, concept which is attached to it. So even if some of the L&D leaders want to present their ideas to the management in terms of implementing those ideas, so there's always a concept of what is the return of the L&D initiatives, because at the end of the day, the business, is of course hungry for the returns. So one by one, I mean, I'd like to speak to all of you. I mean, how does so? Of course, there are some conventional methods that somebody also mentioned, the ADDIE model. So there are other aspects also towards this. So there are conventional, methods of calculating ROI, but I just wanted to also take your inputs that are there any non-conventional methods as well that some of the leading companies follow in terms of calculating the ROI on the training? Maybe Nikita, you can start off in case you're comfortable.
So, in fact, this question makes me wonder that if, at what stage of the L&D maturity is this question being asked? because how you respond to it is also a reflection of how mature the L&D process in itself is in the organization. So if we were to look at ACG, we have a fairly mature L&D process, and hence I don't remember the last time when we were asked at what's the ROI on this training, because it's a very cultural thing, because over a period of time, most leaders understand the value, the long-term investment of most of the high-value investments on learning, and would not seek in to see what is the immediate that is going to be gained by the business. So one aspect of this is a cultural conversation, even before we talk about money, is what I feel. So it's about really shaping the minds of the leader to ask the right questions on ROI. Asking questions on ROI is not wrong, but tell me how it's going to benefit me in an institutional building way would be a better way to ask this question than telling me that, how do I get an ROI on the buck that I'm investing on a program. So that's the first reframing for me. The second is, at ACG, what we have done is we have developed a L&D index, which is something that we measure every quarter, which gets also rolled up to an annualized way of looking at effectiveness. And it has several parameters over process, systems, practice, which is actually a part of all talent leads, all talent heads, and also a part of CEO scorecard, which means that for a CEO to be able to achieve his objective, he will need to maintain a certain score on how is he investing his time, attention on the talent practices. And that is a collective focus that we gain. And we also have a mechanism of a quarterly talent review, where the entire index gets discussed with the top level leadership, with the board. It also gets discussed annually. And I think that's a little better way of effectiveness measurement in my view, because you're not being answered, or you're not being questioned, and you don't need to answer. It's a collective conversation. So it's not the business asking HR that what's the ROI, but it's about we all together figuring out to get a better effectiveness out of this, because they have an equal skin in the game.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, absolutely agreed. But the collaborativeness needs to be there. Rolling out whether it be any pillar of HR, L&D, not let alone. So yeah. Jagatheesh, how was it? Any methods, any methodology that you guys follow at Bosch in terms of calculating the ROI on the L&D initiatives?
So, I mean, when you say it's an ROI calculation, there are two things which happens. One is as a learning program is devised, when it gets tied to a business goal on why this learning program is being devised, and when the learning intervention happens in such a way to address the business goal, the ROI gets tracked by itself at stages. But this will happen for a program which is created for a specific need to address a specific business goal. Now, let us talk about something which is like a program which is to create a transformation in the mindset of the people. Let us say a program to build learning agility, right? Now, what kind of ROI would you track here, right? Now, one is a currency-based ROI, which people look at, which I spoke about earlier, where we say, okay, this is how it is. This program has been devised, or this learning intervention has been devised for a business goal. It gets tracked along with the business goal. There is a proper way to track it. The other thing is the value side of it for some interventions like that of, for example, learning agility or building learning as a culture. Now, there are different parameters which we track. While defining a program and while deciding why it is run, we kind of map these parameters on what would be the outcome indicators for these kind of culture building, attitude building kind of programs. So then that gets tracked as ROI, not a dollar value or a euro value every time. The third part is something which is being delivered to achieve excellence in the current form. So one is a new program you build, which is for a specific business goal, which is futuristic. Another is culture, attitude building kind of programs where it is again future oriented. The third is to concentrate on the present. You have a set of 200, 300 programs or 500 programs which you regularly run to make sure your business runs perfectly on what you're doing. So on those kind of things, as the program gets completed and they start delivering, that is a measure which we take as an ROI instead of a dollar or a euro value. So there are different ways in terms of what kind of ROI you see, why you see an ROI, and how you track it. Not always it's value or dollar based. It's also kind of indicator based. We define those indicators before start up the program. And new things also emerge out after you complete the intervention to say, hey, did we think about it? Maybe not, but yeah, it's coming up. So these are all the things what we do.
Learnings that you get out of the implementations.
Exactly.
Great. Ravi, any thoughts?
Okay, so to me, in my definition, there is nothing like ROI. There is nothing like return on investment. So you change it, it is return on impact. I've never ever met a business leader saying, I have given you this much money, how much you're going to return to me? Never. I can bet nobody has. Only they say, we have given so much money, what did you do with it? Right? So it is, they are not asking the money return on the investment they have done. They're asking, what are you doing with it? So if you can show the impact of what you have done, then I think you won the battle. Now, a lot of us are so busy identifying how to calculate the money return, and we are losing the essence of how you can make the program more effective, right? So that is one part. Again, should we measure everything? Answer is again a no. Measure what is critical. So apply the simple Pareto principle, 80-20. Invest 80% of your money on the 20% of your talent. They'll bring you business. They are the people who are bringing the maximum business. So invest 80% of your money there. The remaining 20% spend on the remaining 80% of the people. And that's where your digital comes into picture. Digital can be measured by learning behavior, as Jagatheesh was saying. What do you mean by learning behavior? Learning behavior, how often are people learning? How often am I going on the platform? What time of the day I'm learning? How often I go back to the platform? What kind of content I'm consuming? How am I learning? Right? So these are some of the KPIs that can be considered. These are learning behavior KPIs. And that's good enough impact if we can show to the business. Learning culture can be shown through some of these KPIs as well. So look at learning impact, return on impact. Nobody is asking you money value. No one is asking. Don't get confused with it. Don't get hassled with it. Focus on how you can show impact. How many sales people were trained? How many certified project management professionals do we have in the company? That's an impact we are creating. Because if you have certified project management professionals, you're getting those many projects. You're directly contributing to business. How many trained leaders do we have in the company? Right? Nobody is saying that give me rupee value of the leadership program that we did. What they're saying, are my leaders speaking a different language? Are they in growth mindset or they're still having a fixed mindset? So they're looking at demonstrated behavior of the leaders. They're not asking rupee value back. That's my view about return on investment.
Wonderful thoughts, Ravi, and some very key words that you touched upon: growth mindset. I mean, we'd like to invest in people who have that kind of a mindset. It's considered to be one of the key hiring competencies these days. While we look at people at a certain level. So moving on to Debashish. Debashish, what's your thought? And now I would like to change my definition of ROI. What's your inputs on the return on impact?
Nothing much different from what Ravi spoke about. If I think if a CFO or a CEO asks you, right, here is my 10 lakh rupees you have spent on leadership training. What is the impact? I know my question would be, you have just spent $10 million on a product. The impact will come, break-even will happen only after 10 years. Right? There are things, especially on trainings which you can't have impact immediately, especially behavioral trainings. Things won't change overnight. It takes time to make those changes. And when it happens, it is permanent. So all these measurable metrics, we can all measure it. Impact will happen. But if somebody is expecting that you will get dollar value return, so to say, immediately after the training, that won't happen. And I agree with Ravi that I don't think any reasonable CEO or CFO will ask that as well. But that will be my response if somebody asks that. At Berkadai, I think we measure ROI in 3 ways. Ultimately, what you're trying to do here in Berkadai is to build a culture of learning and development, right? So that everybody is willing and participating in their own learning and are accountable for their own learning, not being pushed or driven by the leadership. So there are 3 things. We do it in 3 broad metrics, and some of my speakers have already touched upon it. One is we call it as an engagement story. It is about how much is our employees participating in the learning and feeling committed in their career development. So here we talked about how many times proactively somebody has said, say, went to the LinkedIn Learning and checked in without any push. It is their own need, they have gone and checked in, right? This is something that we track to just check the engagement of the learner, right? Second one is a social story, right? So social story is, the goal here is really understanding how people at every level are involved in learning and sharing their expertise, so that learning isn't only L&D driven. This is where we see, do you have a tribe of influencers? Do you have tribe of SMEs, mentors, module owners, coaches, content creators who are outside of L&D team, but are collaborating very closely in the learning and development goals of the organization? That's where you also capture the social story, and also that tells me about how the culture of learning is spreading. The third one, very briefly, is the skill story, because end of the day, I think we are all in the business of improving the skills, making sure that the capabilities are developed. End of the day, this is where we keep a track about what are the skills that our employees proactively going and checking in. What are they learning on their own, right? We also keep a track of how fast are they learning, right? We also see how much, ultimately it all boils down to what are the changes of career it is happening. What is the velocity of the learning that is happening? How fast are people learning? So broadly, these 3 things about social, skills, and engagement talks about building a learning culture, which ultimately will take care of the other metrics, other measurable metrics, is what we feel.
Great. Great. Thanks for your inputs, Debashish. Sandeep, Ravi, I think, has a point to make.
I think I was just remembering about a funny story. If you allow, I can share with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Please go on.
So, once I was sharing a newly launched leadership curriculum with the top management in the company. About 30-40 people were there on the call. Sure. And sharing all the leadership path of first-time managers, middle managers, seniors, executives. And one of the senior managers came on the call. He said, Ravi, all this is good, but you know what? After attending your training programs, people come back and do the same thing. Money goes in the drain, right? It's a common question. So I took a pause, thought about it. Of course, it's coming from a very senior manager, so I have to think how to respond to this, right? So I took a pause, took a breath, and thought, what should I say? So here is what I did. And I think this is also food for thought, for reflection for all of us. So when an employee goes to meet a customer for making a sales, what does a typical manager do? A typical manager would prepare the employee. This is the presentation that you're going to make. What questions you would be asking, what product are you going to sell? There's a good enough preparation that goes on. Once the meeting is over, the employee comes back, the same thing follows. And whatever commitments the employee has made, the manager follows up till the commitments are met, right? So we asked this question to the leaders. What do you do when the employee goes to the manager? So these were the responses that came. So then I asked, now I'm asking all 40 of you, when an employee goes for training, what do you do? Nothing. Nothing. When they come back from the training, what do you do? Nothing. So then what are you expecting? What are you expecting? You are not giving them a space to implement any kind of new learnings that they have. Where will ROI come from? Right? So unless you don't make the leaders responsible for development of people, there will never be ROI. It will never happen. Right? So this small story I thought I'll share with all of you.
Great, Ravi. A very pertinent point. You covered the background of the story was pretty impactful. Great. Yeah, Sandeep, I was coming to you. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I like to echo, certain points that Ravi mentioned.
Sure.
And I completely agree with him there. And that's the same approach that we actually take. That we haven't really been asked, or we're not really asked about associating, returns from a dollar standpoint, right? Of course, there is a certain impact. Of course, there are budgets. That's how we all work on. But having said that, it's completely based on impact as well. There is a certain association for certain skill development, which can be associated with an ROI, not in terms of dollar value, but more in terms of how are they actually being positioned for a certain engagement. Give you an example. Especially technology skills, when folks are actually being enabled on technology skills, if it's a new engagement, if they're being reskilled, it's a clear correlation because it's based on a demand. So, if they're performing on a new engagement on a new skill, that's a return on impact that you're already getting. So obviously no questions asked. If you're going to, for example, any soft skill or any consulting training or any leadership enablement, it's so open-ended. It's you don't really have a return. Even if it's an impact, you're not going to get the impact, or there's not going to be any return, even vis-a-vis impact, in a short span of time. That's going to take time, right? There is a certain gestation period for certain skills. So I'm making clear distinction even here, even in terms of impact. There are some skills where you have an impact immediately. There are certain skills which cannot be measured for a certain period of time. So it depends. But having said that, our leadership is completely invested in terms of enablement. It's a complete top-down approach, so to speak. I've been fortunate enough from that perspective. So I think it's been an easy way ahead for us.
Sure. Thanks. Shiv, how about the logistics industry? I mean, how does it work in terms of the models that we have?
So, Prateek, basically, ROI is one of the favorite subject basically in L&D. When when our L&D got merged with the L&D HR, it was, I believe, 4 years back. And my first question was, what is ROI? Today, if I am I would agree with my teammates. ROI does not mean that return in the dollars or in INR or something else. But the ROI for us, the meaning is that if I am going to conduct this training, first of all, the question comes is which training you want to conduct, number one. You can't straight away go and say, oh, I have a budget of 5 crore rupees of a training and go and conduct this training based on the TNI and other things. No. My question to the people, those who comes and says, hey, we want to give a training. I said, fine, we will deliver the training. What is you are looking for? What is your objective? End result, what you need? Then they say, my end result is so-and-so, right? Based on that, of course, the modules are developed, preparations are done. And when we deliver this training to the selective participant, of course, you cannot go and, deliver to as many as people. It is always a selective participant. So when we go and deliver that training to the selective participant, my trainers always tell at the end that, boss, this is what we are going to achieve end of the day. When I'm saying end of the day, does not mean कि training कर लिया और शाम को आपको पूछ रहे क्या हुआ. Of course, once you will start implementing in those things, and then when things started improving on those areas, that becomes the return of investment, return of impact for me, because I thoroughly believe in one formula, which is learning plus implementation is equal to impact. I will do learning, but if I'm not going to implement, right, it is not going to give an impact. Secondly, learning, anybody can go and does, your manager will tell you, okay, you need this training, go and attend that. I agree with our fellow colleague. He mentioned that nobody take things on what training they did. After training, what is the impact? What are the new learning, right? If something is not happening, then there is no need of asking for a ROI, right? So for me, ROI is something, if you are implementing the learning and what result we are expecting is already been communicated in the beginning of the training, is actually ROI. And I have multiple example about the ROI per se. No CEO, no chairman of the company, no founder, anybody will ask ki kitna mere ko paisa de rahe walo. Everybody will talk about that. Today, if I am doing this business and you have delivered, you are going to, I need these things, how you are going to deliver and how it is going to improve my performance. That's modamoti. And for calculating of ROI, you can bring any finance guy, he will calculate the ROI and he'll give it to the people. That's not the job of a L&D professionals to share the details. That's my take on it.
Sure. Thanks a lot, guys, for your valuable suggestions on these questions. From today, I think Ravi has changed my definition at least, and I'm really happy for that. I mean, of course, that was more on the lighter note, but I absolutely agree on the impact part more than the investment part. So that brings to the end of this particular section. So let's move on to a different ball game, not a different ball game, but not a very old ball game in L&D, a concept of micro learning. These days, I mean, we see a lot of small size, bite size trainings happening. Companies are coming to Ravi's first point also. I mean, there's a gamification also added to the L&D initiative. So what are your thoughts going forward on the micro learning platforms that are there? Maybe Shiv, you can only start up with the conversation.
So micro learning today, if as an individual, if you see, nobody stays with except a movie, right? If the movie is
the attention span, if you're talking about, yeah.
If you talk about attention span, it's not more than even a 30 seconds sometime, right? Then how you are going to train people? On this area, I had a discussion with my my sales head. He said, I wanted to have a sales training, right? I said, sales training, okay, fantastic. Which training you wanted to have? What exactly you wanted to have? He said, complete sales ka karna hai. I said, theek hai, give me an answer. There are, say, multiple people working under sales category, and maybe some people are good in presentation skill, but some are not good in negotiation skill. Some are good in pitching, some may not be. Do you feel everybody should we should go and give the training in all pattern? He said no. I said, then in that case, let's identify the people where we see that the negotiation skill is a challenge, but the presentation skill is fine. I'm not going to give him a training on a presentation skill, but I'm going to give him a training on a negotiation skill, that how we can, improvise on those areas. So I believe the micro learning on this small area, if you identify, because we follow a very simple approach called inch wide, mile deep approach. When I say inch wide, mile deep approach, is that what is one thing which I can change on an individual can bring the result. A lot of people basically works on the area of improvements, right? But I believe in utilizing the area of strength. So based on that, which is the one area where you feel that this person required more strength, more training, you improve on those areas. And then another one, which I said, if I am not good in negotiation skill, how we can improvise on that. So I think micro learning in that area, and then people are also happy, because if I know I am good in presenting, I may not be putting my focus towards that presentation or the training which I am getting. So when the important topic will come, as I said, you were talking about ROI. I said that is why one of my favorite one, but you put me on last. That's all.
My apologies for that, Shiv.
No issues.
Debashish, what are your thoughts on micro learning? I mean, has Berkadai implemented some of these in the last so many years?
Yes, we have, and we actually have total. We have LinkedIn Learning, which we have taken as a all organizations, everybody can use it at any point of time. Plus, we also build a bit of our own content as well. Our training team is equipped to do that. The way we use it is that we use it more of a complement to the regular learnings, right? I don't think micro learning can be a substitute of learning. A micro learning can be great as a quick high level information or a quick reference material, right? If you cannot do a data analytics training through micro learning, what you can do in 30 seconds or 1 minute is that, well, this is data, there is discrete and continuous, there are some few examples. So at some point, you want to just go and refresh your learning. You can go and check that. Right? But you cannot really build a content or reasonable content on micro learning. There's limitations on that as well. But I agree that it is a great tool to complement the current trainings that we have, because learners today need variety. They need visual aids, they need gamifications, they need examples. They need something which is available on the fingertips, something they can Google it up, so to say, quote unquote. They don't want to wait for a training session to happen, or even ask somebody. Right? Today, if I have a question, I might have my best friend sitting next to me, but I will not ask him. The first thing I would do is to Google.
Absolutely.
उसको पता भी है तो मानूंगा नहीं, Google ने बोला है कि ये सही है. People have become medical doctors also with the help of Google, sadly. So I think for us, for Berkadai, it is used a lot, very widely, but more as a reference and more as a substitute and a complement to some of the training programs that we do.
Sure. Great. Ravi, if you could elaborate more on the practices that you follow in terms of micro-learning at your organization.
So as I said, we had launched the digital learning way back in 2019. We were preparing for it 3 years ahead of that. So we launched a learning experience platform the end of 2019, just before the pandemic, not knowing the pandemic will hit us. And we had a plan that by 2024 is when we'll be at the peak, but we're already at the peak. So as we speak, so for those who don't know what is an LXP is a learning experience platform, which is like a cloud. So you have a cloud and all the LMS is feeding the data from the bottom. So we have LinkedIn Learning, we have Coursera, we have Good Habits, Thrive, Skillsoft. We have about 8 or 9 different platforms, which is feeding the content. We have our internal technical academies, leadership academies, sales academies feeding the content. We have our internal centers of excellence feeding the content. And we also have internal curators feeding the content. So we have a huge plethora of content available. And then what we are doing is we are working with the centers of excellence once again to create learning paths, to curate the right kind of content that can be used and offered to our people. So we definitely use digital in a very serious way. We are using a lot of beautiful content that's available on all these platforms. So something is good on LinkedIn, something is good on Good Habits, something is good on Thrive, something is good on Social Talent, something is good on Coursera. You curate all of that and put it in a learning path. So for example, for sales, so I have a sales learning path for people at the entry level, mid level, and senior level, completely digital. On top of it, we give them classroom intervention to manage their social needs. And right now, classroom also in a digital format. So for us, we are doing digital in a very big way. Apart from that, we also provide different forms of learning, be it gamification, as I said earlier, or simulation. We are also using AI and VR to large extent now. So we brought in that element as well. And we do a lot of various disruptive things like the book readings, the book clubs, Toastmasters clubs, and various other initiatives to drive these kind of digital learning. So I would say that we are ahead of the game on digital learning in a big way and doing a lot in this space.
Perfect. Good to know that, Ravi. Nikita, what are your thoughts in ACG? I'm sure you would have a plethora of training modules, but how is micro learning taken into consideration?
So good to listen to all the point of views around this. And we also have a very well-established learning management system, on top of which I like the way Ravi explained, because I think that is something that we realize that having an LMS is not enough and you need an LSA, which is more like an aggregator. And then you need an LXP, which actually creates the right kind of experience for people to utilize the content that you generate. And we've been able to create that framework and bring in the requisite tech support early 2019. I agree to Ravi that we thought that we will take time for deployment and utilization, but then we were into COVID and the entire access to technology, the need for quick digital learning experiences led to a very great early adoption. But I also echo with what Debashish said, that, you can have micro learning, you can have an aggregator which will aggregate a lot of content both internally and externally through several partners, but it only fulfills an aspect of learning which is more towards learning retention, more towards learning reinforcement, or creating cohort-centric learnings where you want bite-sized learning to be integrated with the main modules. So it's not only about having the bite-sized learning, but it's about really having the acumen on how to design it and what to make available at what juncture of the learning journey. So there is a whole sort of planning that goes behind it. What I'm also seeing as a future of this, is to then elevate it to not only looking at micro learning, but also looking at micro experiences. And perhaps that's the future of micro learning, where how do you create experiences which are even beyond the tech assimilation platforms, beyond Coursera, Udemy, edX, LinkedIn Learning, but you create opportunities where somebody could watch a movie and just create a micro moment to talk about the learnings of it. Where you have these speed dating options or human library options where you meet people within your organization, talk about different things that impact them and that they have learned, different books that they have read and or different products that they have experienced, and what's the uniqueness about that product that brings them to a conversation. And what we are wanting to experiment in the future is in the space of micro experiences, because like you're all saying, the time is of essence, and you may not have that much time to read a book, but you may definitely have that 10 minutes to listen to it through somebody who has already read it. So how do you create more of those conversations, more of those experiences to make learning come alive? And perhaps that's also a way to build in the learning culture.
Great, great, Nikita. Thanks for your inputs. Jagatheesh, coming to you, so how does it, I mean, of course, you mentioned that it's been just 7 months with Bosch, and before that you were about 14 years with Accenture. So how was your experience in terms of this topic?
Okay, so let me touch upon micro learning, right? So where is this micro learning piece coming and what it actually helps people who are designing learning programs, and what way it helps learners? See, today we are moving from a scenario where organization had positional advantage in the market, like price, product, network, to an adaptive advantage, meaning we need to quickly learn, turn back and tell the customer that, hey, this is what it is. Now, where does micro learning help here? So when, if you look at a path where a new area or a new technology or a known area, you want to create an awareness, you want to make people conversant, you want to make people experienced, you want to make people experts, and you want to make people evangelists. This is the path. Now, micro learning will exactly fit in my experience, that you want to create an awareness, micro learning helps. Dot there. Now, quickly, I'm on my way. I mean, it's like ATM, anytime learning. I say it ATL. So today it's ATL, which is needed. I am on a car driving somewhere and I need to know something on that. I have my infrastructure of the organization where I get in a learning space. We call it Bosch learning space, for example, a learning space where I get in, click on the video or an audio and I listen to it and say that, oh, this is what it is, right? That's an awareness angle, right? Now getting onto the experienced angle, would micro learning help? Probably that is for the future, like what Nikita said, right? I mean, we need to really look at how experientially micro learning could help. But pretty much a learning space which has the elements, what Ravi pointed out, wherein you have multiple using aspects there, feed all the data in, and you have an experience platform where you build an engagement, right? And then it goes through. So the beauty about micro learning is you can give multiple components on micro learning, but the way it gets consumed is depending upon the engagement model that you build around the micro learning. I mean, there comes the gamification angle if you want to, Organizations can decide to offer micro learning, stay away, saying that, hey, you learn it, or organizations decide to build an engagement plan around it, build a gamification plan, and say that, hey, you do it, keep answering questions. I have a forum where people ask questions, I respond for small things, and I get points, right? For example. So it's all about how do you build an engagement plan? How do you build a gamification theme around it? And how do you use it for your organization's benefit? Saying that, hey, this is what people are learning more. This is what people are asking more. How do I build small modules there? So from a usage of tools perspective, I think, I mean, panelists here covered like LinkedIn Learning or like Coursera's of the world, plural sites of the world. We do use many of them. And along with that, the learning space which could offer the small modules is what is helping us to kind of provide micro learning to our associates. That's what we do.
Great. Sandeep, your thoughts?
I agree, to a lot of points that Jagdish actually mentioned, because yes, we've been using micro learning for a couple of years now, and to a large extent, that's been restricted to more of an awareness piece, more than deep skilling, obviously, because there are a couple of steps that you actually need to take. It has to be experiential. You need to go in depth into a lot of detail for any deep skilling. At any and the higher level you go, obviously, it's going to be a lot more. So to a large extent, it has been restricted to awareness, whether it's content curated internally or from our external partners. But to a large extent, it has been, restricted to awareness. That's what our experience has been.
Sure. So great to get all of your inputs on that. Of course, it is something which is to be looked upon. This is something which the companies are looking forward to. But of course, I really like Debashish's point that it might not be 100% substitute of what we want to actually do. But yeah, it could actually take care of our small needs, and then getting employee engaged. Jagdish made a very great point, and I mean, if you could relate it to the engagement of your people, so it could serve a dual purpose for you as well. So some great thoughts from the panel there. Okay, cool. So just moving towards, of course, I think Ravi, you have a time constraint there. I think you have time till 6. I just got a message.
I'm available. No, I'll stay back.
Okay, wonderful. So moving on to certain other aspects of the L&D function. So in my little experience of the so I'm primarily from a talent acquisition vertical, but in my whatever little that I could have a hang of L&D, leadership trainings are something which are less spoken about, majorly in large to some big to large senior organizations. And majorly, we focus more on the trainings of masses and training of frontlines. So what are your thoughts in terms of developing a exhaustive leadership training program? And what goes behind it? What are your thoughts on the developing an effective leadership training program? Maybe Jagdish, you can start off the conversation.
Sure, Prateek. When we say leadership, right? So in today's scenario, what is that the world is looking at, depending upon the business change and depending upon the industry, the way it changes is, we need transformative leadership, right? I mean, leadership as a leadership which motivates people, which works with people, they need to do what they are doing well today, no questions about it. But at the same time, it needs to be completely futuristic and transformative. To put it more crudely, we need to build leaders who are able to constructively distract, right? Now, that is the key word here. Because what is going well, but it is not going to go well down the line 5 years, 7 years. The way people look at business is changing. The way business models are being used is changing. So we need to build leaders who have that transformational ability, who have that constructive distracting ability. Now, that is a key here. Now, for senior leaders, is it like they don't know what it is? Definitely not. They know very well what it is, right? But it's about the acceptance that this is what is the situation. And hey, this is where I think you need to just show the light, saying that, hey, as people who are building the journey of leadership, you need to show the light as to, hey, this is where you need to look at, holding a mirror, saying that, hey, this is what is reality. That is more than enough for them to start the journey. Okay, now journey is starting. There are two aspects of leadership specifically in today's context. We have leaders who are there, who are staying for a long time, who have repeatedly provided success in the organization, in the industry. So they know what is to be done, but that becomes a double-edged sword. So we need to clearly bring in that mindset of agility to say that, hey, what has been helping you as a leader till today may not continue to help you in the decisions that you're going to take. So we need to build leaders who get in that learning agility to say that, hey, what I had today may not work tomorrow. So let me step back and see what it is. At the same time, we need to build leaders who openly build a complete pipeline of leaders, because today's world, I mean, people are kind of delivering, and what if they move when the next set of leaders are needed? So leaders should be also given a responsibility. So any leadership program we build, we should build in this component. Apart from you delivering well, apart from you contributing to the organization in terms of building the future, apart from you being agile in knowing what it is very, very important that you as a leader show us who is the next in your place. It's a very tough ask, but that is something, if we are able to build that mindset, if we are able to build in with leaders through our programs, that is something which is going to help. So to me, any leadership intervention we are doing today should have two things. One is to concentrate on the present. Two is to look at the future. So become a constructively destructive leader. Be open to do that. I constructively destruct some part of my business, but that is to make sure in 2035, my business, or 2030, or even 3 years down the line, my business looks good, right? That is the first part. Second part is accept when a mirror is shown, saying that, hey, this is where I stand, which is a very tough parameter, seeing that they have been successful over a period of time, right? They've been highly successful. I mean, they would have done wonders, and that's why they are there. So showing them a mirror is the toughest part of a L&D team, to say that, hey, this is where we are, and make them accept it, make them agile. And then the third part is make them build next set of leaders, so that the organization never starves for leadership. So if our leadership program encompasses these three components, I think it's good. I don't think we can teach them. We can guide them. We can show them the way. To put it more precisely, coaching is a word, if you want to use, we can use. But the point is, unless and until it happens through them, we can't really teach something. That is my point of view, but open for the panel to comment.
Sure. I'm definitely taking out constructively disrupting the system out of this conversation. Pretty good words that you've shared, Jagatheesh. Debashish, your thoughts. What according to you or at the organization is required for making a foolproof leadership training program?
Foolproof is a big word. I don't think I have made one yet. Hopefully I get there. But I think primarily I believe that leadership programs start with leadership of self, right? So when I design a program, it always starts with leading self. Then you lead others, which I think Jagatheesh touched upon, and then you lead organizations. I think for me, it actually goes in that direction. Lead self, lead others, and lead organizations. Now, about leading self, very briefly again, is that the competencies required to be a leader has totally changed. Like you talked about the new normal. Leaders now have to be very resilient, right? Leaders have to be very compassionate, at the same time, very, very vulnerable as well. Leaders today are not expected to have all the answers. They should just know how to ask the right questions. Those days are gone that you go up to leaders and they have apparently are very knowledgeable, has the answer. I don't think anybody has all the answers, or at least even some of the answers today. So being very self-aware is extremely important. Where do you stand, right? What are my shortcomings? What are my development? That is very, very important, that every leadership journey or leadership intervention should go through. That's the first step. I think two more things that I definitely would incorporate in a leadership program, which I do, is technology. We have to understand that, people who, if I'm talking about senior leaders who started their careers like 20, 25 years back, we hardly had started with technology. And we have actually succeeded sometimes despite not being very good at it. But we don't have an option right now. If you don't understand technology, then in Jagdish's words might be, you'll distract yourself someday very soon. Earlier, you could afford to delegate technology literacy to others. You can't do that anymore. You have to do it. There's an option, right? I think the third thing is, one very important component of a good leadership program is having a cross-functional experience. Very tough to do, but it has to be done. It's almost like an MBA, right? In second year, I choose a finance and HR and marketing. If I am a HR guy, I have to do a proper project in finance or in sales or in marketing. Otherwise, I would not know, simply would not know. The best of trainer can't train me on marketing. If I don't go to that, I think Shiv talked about the last mile. If I don't go the last mile, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. So that is very important for me as well. So these are the things we try and incorporate in our training programs.
Sure. So for Nikita, I'd just like to kind of, change a little bit of this question. How do you measure the impacts of an effective leadership training program?
Thanks for that tweak, Prateek. And so for me, in fact, I like this question because the last 18 months of being in the pandemic, we have invested the most in leadership development, and large part of our focus has been to really design for the future. And the starting point for us has been really looking at what's our group strategy like, what's the direction that the business wants to take, and in order to reach there, what kind of leadership do we need? Because leadership development is not fundamentally different than what strategy or what business you are into. And perhaps that was a starting point for us to know what kind of personas do we need in the organization. And since some part of this conversation is also around competencies and persona, I'd like to just spotlight that this first starting point is identifying what kind of personas are required in the organization to take the organization to the next level of spectrum or orbit. And what we did was we identified what kind of personas are prerequisites. So things like, do we need an innovator, or do we need somebody who's an integrator? Do we need somebody who is empathetic leader, or do we need somebody who's disruptive? And every business needs a kind, so it may not be pertinent to say that one oversees the other, but it's about what is relevant from a future context and what does that business require. So, and identifying that, curating that becomes the first step to creating the right impact of what kind of leadership journey you wish to create. Otherwise, you wish for something and you might just land up creating completely antitheses of
the board.
Yeah. The second thing that we realized is that we are actually stepping into a very boundaryless world, where there is a lot of global inclusion. There is no classification between functions, which might happen in the future. There is an opportunity where you could have people from any geography, from any walk of life, taking up any role, and which really shrinks the entire world. What does that mean? It means that when you are looking at future leaders, you might expect the same level of boundarylessness in those leaders. So it's no longer going to be that if I'm in HR, I'm going to be in HR for life. And if I'm in finance, I'm going to be in finance for life. And the leaders of tomorrow are going to be leaders who are able to not only integrate the boundarylessness, but are also able to have the same nature of exposure. So are they able to move the orbit to looking at handling roles which are way too diverse, way too different, and really challenges their ability to stretch beyond. So we follow the Herb Henkel's framework of 2x2x2x5 format, which is where the individual has to take up multi-level exposures in order to really be coming up the game to be called as a senior leader. And that takes away the entire stereotyping of who can take up a role and who should take up a role, or how many experience you need to really take up a role. And it really breaks a lot of norms which we are typically set in the old world. The third thing that we are also seeing is that, you also need leaders who are disruptive. And because the world is disruptive, and you can't create disruptive minds following the traditional ways. So, organizations want a disruptive leader, but they want it to grow organically, which means they may not appoint a 30-year-old as an NPD head for an R&D center, which is actually supposed to be a disruptive center, where they will look out for somebody who is 60-year-old who has the requisite experience. And we're also looking at how do we create Shark Tanks opportunities, ideation club, culture clubs, where people who are able to really disrupt and show their potential in an exponential way. And what does that do to an organization? It really creates a new norm of leadership. Because what you need to change is also what defines leadership. And there's a leader in every hierarchy. When you talk about leadership program, we typically talk about the apex role. But when you talk about leader in every hierarchy, it suddenly empowers the entire organization to look at leadership development in a completely different way. So these are the three core things that we do. Needless to say, there is also the traditional things of succession planning and CXO leadership development and all of general management programs which go on, which is more of sustainability measures to development. But the three unique ones are the ones that I mentioned before.
Great, some very pertinent points, Nikita. Thanks a lot for your inputs. Ravi, so what's it with Siemens? I mean, how does the leadership program looks like there?
Well, nothing different from any other leadership program, right? In a leadership program, you teach almost everything that a person has always learned already in their career. You're only exciting them once again, if you really look at it, right? So something that makes us a little different from others is we do a session on clearing up their mind, clearing up their space before they get into the session. And we do something known as a context setting session. Now, this context setting session, generally, if you have heard for various training programs, may last as much as 1 hour or 2 hours. We do a one-day context setting session. And this is what makes us different. This is where we challenge them on something as basic as when was the last time they picked up a book and read on leadership? How often they read newspapers? What do they know about their own company? Right? Do they know the vision of the company? Can they articulate it? When was the last time they had a discussion with their team on topics like these? So we really challenge them. We ask them very, very tough questions. And that really breaks them up in terms of understanding that whatever I was doing so far was only allowing me to do my current job better. Yeah. So if you ask somebody, if I'm going to throw a change at you, how would you react? So let me ask you, Prateek, how would you react?
Change as in?
Any change. Let's say, Prateek, there is a change going on. What would be a natural reaction?
Try to kind of get into the details. What is it all about? How is going to impact me as an individual and my team? So kind of, I'll be in a questionable kind of a scenario.
Absolutely. And that is exactly how all leaders respond. But this is not why we hire the leaders for. We hire these leaders to be the reason for change, just not be part of the change. We hire these leaders to drive the change, right? And not question the change. You get my point? So yeah. This is the place where we really excite them. Of course, during the leadership program, we make the journey very interesting by bringing various different forms of learning inside the program, be it coaching, be it simulations, be it peer learning, tacit learning, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the things that we do differently. In terms of content, I think any leadership program, as Debashish mentioned, learning about self, learning about how do you manage others, your peers, and learning about your organization. I think as far as you cover these 3 or 4 elements, then your leadership program is through. You are there.
Sure.
But as you go up in the ladder in terms of senior management, I think they don't like to learn from theories. They like to learn from each other. So you need to bring a lot of social learning inside it. So if you keep these things in mind, then they work very well. For us, they're working quite well. And now in today's context, it's also about how you transform these programs from classroom to digital. So what you are doing in a 5-day classroom, now you have to possibly do it in a 3-day virtual. And it's not so easy. Holding on so many trainers, so leaders.
Senior leaders, yeah.
So you really need extraordinary trainers to be able to hold these top guys
True.
who have no patience to go back on their mobile phones and on your emails.
Emails, yeah.
Any moment, right? You don't know what they're doing on the other side.
True. Very true. Cool. Shiv, what are your thoughts on this? So how does DTDC invest in their leadership training programs in terms of the content, in terms of delivery? How does it happen?
So Prateek, I will be agree with all my colleagues what they said, but I would like to mention few points here which we are actually doing, and we believe on delivering the things and then showcasing the things that what we do. The biggest challenge today for everyone is that leaders are not developing leaders. That's the biggest challenge in any organization you talk about. We talk about a top management level, we talk about senior management level, we talk about middle, junior, or any level you talk about. And that's the pain area. So we as an organization, DTDC, decided that how to develop leaders. And one of the value which we follow is the leadership. And for us, leadership definition is to develop the leaders, right? Although there are multiple definitions about the leadership, but we says that we should develop the leaders for each and every one. We started a program and we brought a disruption. So since we are living in a disruptive world, anytime disruption comes and we need to be ready. So we brought a disruption in our organization, hiring almost 55 engineers, right? In logistics, में engineer जब आते हैं तो लोग सोचने लग जाते हैं कि why the engineers are required. But we hired 55 engineers in 2019. They were supposed to join by 2020, right? And these engineers, we have developed a program called Be the Leader program. And under that program, we have, given them a training in each and every aspect of the business, whether it is any function you talk about. But we were very clear in mind that which function they are going to be ultimately. And we wanted to give them a position of a branch manager. And when you say branch manager, a branch manager in DTDC kind of an organization is a branch who manages the crores of business, manages the millions of shipments, right? Handling 30, 40 manpower kind of a scenario. And at 22 years of a person comes and becomes a branch manager after 3 and 6 months, you can see the disruption there, right? So we worked on those areas and we allotted them a mentor, right? Business mentor. Of course, the change of mindset is very much required in today's world. When initially we started allocating them into the branches, right? Nobody was ready to take them. They said, these are kids, what they will do, right? And when it comes to measurement, right? We, define certain measurement criteria that if this boy is going there, what exactly he need to do and what are the deliverables he is going to present to us. Slowly, when, they started working, the results started coming in. And we manage a scoreboard of, branch managers, area managers like that. And we divided the performances 4 color, which is red, blue, green, and yellow, right? And golden, 5 colors basically, and golden category. Many of the branches were in the red category during the pandemic, when the pandemic started. And the branches who were in the golden category belongs to these people, those who joined us and started working. No experience, only theory experience for 3 months. 3 months after that, they went for an on-job training program and they started working on it. And they were on the top of the rank, if you talk about. So we brought this change, and last year also we went for almost 100 recruitment we did on the similar area, right? So this we are doing for a middle management category where we wanted to develop people so that they can come and deliver and, bring the result in front of the organization and also challenge. And let me give you very, impact theory here. When this young boy started performing, and a person who is already at a 40 or 35 years of age in the branch manager category, and he was not performing, when he started seeing these boys have started performing, they also started performing simultaneously. Why? Because they were knowing that if they don't perform, this person will come and will take the job. Simple as that, right? And today, my all branches, more or less, gold and green category, they are. So this is how we are working on the middle management area, junior management area, and bringing the people. Another side of story, when we talk about senior management, top management, we also hired people from like IIMs, we also hired people from NITI, and we brought them into the system as a senior manager, giving them a job of a projects, right? And you won't believe, we have a case studies wherein the person have joined, not one person, there are multiple people who joined as a senior manager in the organization. Today they have become a assistant vice president at that level. What is the age? 30 years. And that's the welcome change been accepted by all the leadership team, whoever it is, the CFO, CHRO, whoever you called up, right? They have accepted, okay, if this young boy can bring, can be a leadership, why can't other? So this is how we are, bringing disruption into the system. And those who accept, as you rightly said, by the change, right? And how you are going to respond, I should be the reason for that, right? So that's the practice basically we follow, Prateek, in our organization.
Great. I think you got some good inputs there from Shiv. Sandeep, just a quick one on to you. I know we are pressing hard on time. There are a lot of Q&A questions coming in from the students as well, as I've been told by the placement coordinator. But just a quick one from Sandeep. What's your take on an effective leadership program?
Yeah, the way it's structured in IBM is, of course, like in every other organization, there are different levels of leadership programs, and it could be perhaps the same one, but the complexity changes, right?
Absolutely.
So typically, to a large extent, the focus is more on people engagement. The entire organization and the leadership is looking more towards the people aspect of it within leadership. So a lot of our leadership programs, whether internal or whether ones curated internally or the ones with our partners, a lot of focus is on people. Emphasis is on people. The other parts that we do focus on is, whether it's outward mindset or a growth mindset. So, it goes completely on that one. Apart from that, of course, we do have the normal bouquet, as we would call it, whether it's in terms of effective delegation or coaching techniques, so on and so forth. But I think the big ones that I'd call out would be, growth mindset and outward mindset, because the outward mindset bit, in a way, supersedes just about everything else, whether from a business perspective, technology perspective, or people as well. So a lot of focus on that.
Sure. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Sandeep, for your inputs. I've got I'm just putting up one last question, and it's open for all, not to open for anybody can answer. Because of the audience that we are currently into, we did a lot of brainstorming in terms of the L&D initiatives, learnings. We could understand each other's language as well. There were some technical jargons as well in between. With the students who are the helm of at the helm of this conclave. So any last minute tips that you want to give to the students of IIM Kashipur who have been there since last 1.5 hours with us in terms of in order to prepare them for the future? Anybody can take this.
Yeah, Sandeep or Prateek, I'd like to.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
One. And this is from my experience within IBM and outside as well. And what I'd like to recommend, to all leaders here, budding leaders here, that people are always at the center of business, technology, and innovation. And every tool, platform, process, or experience needs to be aligned with enabling employees. So it's finally completely people-centric. Another factor, and of course, a separate topic, but I definitely want to call that out, and because we have our future leaders here, is to drive an inclusion agenda in spirit in terms of your enablement, because that really enables the entire workforce. It kind of brings in a completely different spirit into enablement. So that's something that I'd like to really call out.
Great. Anybody else? Yeah, Jagatheesh, if you want to shell out some tips for some budding leaders on this call.
Yeah, probably we can call it tips or thoughts, basically.
Yeah,
so
sure.
From my experience of being with Bosch and prior to Bosch or whatever it is, one thing if I would expect people to build is agility in learning. So that is something which is very, very critical. What happens after we move out of a very good management program is we feel that, yeah, I have done and I'm ready for the industry, but actually we are not. Let us be very honest about it. it looks nice. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to threaten anyone here, but what I'm telling is the world outside needs us to continue to learn every day and every week and every year. So build in the learning agility. Don't be surprised once you get onto the industry to see that, is this what I did over the last 2 years? No, it's not like
True, it happens. Absolutely, it happens.
exactly. So be agile, be open, build that learning agility so that you keep learning every day and every moment. Then life is very happy. That's what I would say.
Great. Yeah, Ravi, some last minute thoughts.
Yeah, I was just about to say what Jagdish said, that don't give up on learning. There is a famous quote which says that you will, if you continue to do what you did, you will get what you got. Yeah. So if you continue to do what you did, you will get what you got. And this applies to a lot of us in the industry who've been there for so long. Don't get that to yourself. That's very important. Second, I would say that see how you can bring more and more innovation, new ideas. I think we guys are getting exhausted day by day, and we want ideas from you, especially related to technology. And if you have some crazy idea, then please do get in touch. We all are available on LinkedIn. If you have some fantastic idea using technology, then we are hungry for it. We're really looking forward for it. So don't hesitate. You can directly reach on LinkedIn as well. Looking forward for it.
Thanks, Ravi. Thanks for being so cooperative with the students fraternity. Thank you. Yes, Nikita.
Yeah, I'm going to say that, the very fact that you are in this forum and listening to this, which means that you have all that you need to learn, because you would have learned all through your life to reach here. So I think take a moment to pause, acknowledge, celebrate, and realize that that ingredient that you need to learn Excel is already within you. And perhaps for me, that is extremely fundamental to learning. What's inside you makes you learn, not really what's available outside. Because if you have that ingredient inside you, you will make access to anything outside, be it digital, be it a good program, be it support of a manager or a coach, and everything follows thereafter. So, I know that people tend to make learning extremely stressful and also competitive. So I just want to call out and say that you're doing good. And before you get into any of those competitive environments, the best is to re-anchor and say, how do I leverage what I have within? For me, that has always been a point of reference at any point of time in the hierarchies that I have been in the organization.
Sure. Thank you, Nikita, for your words of wisdom. I absolutely agree with that. And more than that, I mean, when you said competitiveness, I agree. So we've been, brought up in a way that we are competitive rather than what I feel that we should be more collaborative. So in the working world, in the working professional world, it's more of collaboration that will take you ahead rather than being competitive. See, being competitive is good. But there's a negative connotation attached to being competitive as well. So I think the more important word for students, for budding leaders, would be more to being more collaborative and have that sense of ownership. Is that what I could add to what Nikita said? Thank you. Shiv, yes, your last minute thoughts, please.
Yeah. So I, just wanted to tell two things only. One, which is most important part, and everybody might have felt in this last 2 years, more or less 1.5 years, although it was there in the system, but I believe nobody has given that weightage to that skill. And that skill is communication skill, right? When it comes to communication skill, you should not stop communicating with the people. That is the most important thing you need to understand, number one. Number two, how fast you can communicate to the last mile so that the impact which you wanted to bring in the system should move fast. Number three, as an individual, when you will pass out from your colleges and then you will go to the corporate world, if you will only start communicating with the limited people around you, and normally I have since I have been dealing with a lot of alumni in our organization, because we are a very young organization that per se. There is a word called chai pe charcha, and it happens with only the people to whom you like. You never bring a person who is veteran in the system, who has been with the system for so many years. You don't bring those people. And that is how, we stop our learning there. We should not do that, right? So communication becomes more important. And the second one, which I have already said, that whatever you are learning, whatever you have learned till now, what you are going to learn in future, please ensure that you learn and you implement those learning in your life, whether it is your personal life or it is your professional life. It will surely is going to give you an impact. It is surely going to give you a result. And I'm not just saying just sake of saying it, because I believe in this and I have delivered and I have worked on these formulas. So if you really work hard towards it, I think it is easy to reach to sky, and sky is the limit.
Thanks, Shiv, for sharing your personal experiences. Debashish, you can please share your thoughts.
Yeah, very quickly, I think we should just focus, I believe, on some of the transferable skills, as I said, because jobs might get redundant, but the skills do not, right? So for example, if you have good persuasive skills, you can do an equally good job as a recruiter and also as a salesman. Again, sales is what we do in recruitment. You always persuade people, negotiate people, and sell your organization and enjoy it, right? So your job at recruitment might be at stake, but you can always move to a different function to continue with your employment, actually do very well. Another thing on transferable skills is data. I would request all of you to get very, very comfortable with data. You cannot get out of it, right? So whether you're from a science background, not science background, it doesn't matter. We are learning. I know I am learning now a lot after 20 years of service, because it is important for me. So for you, it is an advantage. You can start learning on it right now, because that's a great transferable skills that you can get. So these are the 2 quick points I had.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Debashish. And thanks a lot to the entire panel. I myself have learned a lot today, and I will take some very pertinent points out of the discussion today. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Purva and Priyal.
Thank you very much, sir. Indeed, it was a very learning and insightful session. And I know we have a little bit time crunch, but quickly, if we can take a few questions from the students. So you guys can raise your hands and you can ask your questions. Perhaps Sabine, you can start with your question.
Thank you, Priyal, and good evening to all the panelists here. So my question would be directed to the recently suggested point by Debashish, sir, that data is going to be very integral. So can you explain more on that how these data metrics can be associated with learning and development initiatives, and how this can be the future in terms of development in organizations?
That's a great question, Sabina. And I think this is very new. Learning analytics, as we call it, it's a very new subject. We are still learning. We do not know a lot about it. But when the panel spoke a lot about what is the ROI, right? And you also saw that ROI is not always calculated in terms of dollar value that you get out of it. It is also behavioral change. It's also about getting and making an impact. So through learning analytics, when you get a lot of data about what people are learning, when they're learning, how they're learning, right? That will give you a very, very good direction as to which direction is a culture going. And we talked about a lot of platforms, that about learners' experience, about aggregators. Those platforms are not available earlier. Now we have got the platforms, and therefore we get data we can churn. And that will tell us, get into a model where you can predict some of the wants of those learners. So in data, you always say that you always should go for a leading indicator rather than a lagging indicator, right? The moment you're good with data, you'll be able to predict some of the behaviors of the learners and therefore give it to them as and when they need it. So it's a very new and a niche field, and I think you should, it's something that is very, very interesting as well.
Thank you, sir.
Sharon, you can ask your question now. Maybe Abhishek Rathore.
Yeah, hello everyone. So my question was that obviously, like, this point was raised before also. So I just wanted a little bit detail on that. That already see that in these past 1.5 years, the landscape has completely changed. So there is a lot very less interaction among the employees in terms of physical presence. So in the last year, what was the situation was that we were quickly adopting to the situation. Like I was working in HP, so there was like very rush in kind of like connecting the people. But now once the thing has become quite a new normal kind of a thing, so what are your plans in this, like in leadership development or the development of employees, in terms of like how do you plan that they just stay connected to the employees and not feel left out in their own kind of a world? That was my question.
So if anybody,
Yeah. So Abhishek, basically last 1.5 years which you are talking about, that a lot of things has changed, and a lot of things has come on the table. Basically, when you talk about a leadership development program, or you talk about the leadership, or you talk about the people long today, because people in different organizations has a different business types, right? When it comes to logistics, if I give my own company example, when it comes to logistics, I cannot completely hold on WH formula. Although we did that, we worked on it, and coincidentally when we were thinking of having a 5 days week in our organization, we brought this kind of a formula, and suddenly the formula got changed and everybody went to work from kind of a situation. Today, as an organization, first of all, our major priority is that how are we going to engage our people, right? Those who are not there on offices, basically at our offices. So what are we going to do with that? As an organization, we are connecting with each and every individuals, right? One way, which is a practice which we follow in our organization called HR Aapke Dwar. A basic practice I am talking about. I'm not talking about the bigger program. I'm talking about a very basic practice. In that HR Aapke Dwar, when there was no pandemic, we used to visit all the places. We used to find out the issues and sorted out the issues of the people at the ground itself, right? And we were coming out that what kind of solution we can provide them. But today, when this pandemic arises, the biggest question came in front of everyone, those who are working work from home and those who are there in the platform, in the branches. How are we going to deal with that? We started a program called Call to Care, and we reached each and every employee at that stage, because the most important thing before we go for any development program, the biggest program which we need to run was that how we can stabilize the mental level of people. That was the most important program, because everybody knows there were a salary cut, there were a salary delay, there were a huge fear that how we will go into the market, and there are a lot of things were there. So first we decided how we can stabilize this mental level for the individuals, so that they should run the business, they should run their family, and they should come out from this fear. That was our first things which we did. Now, since things are more or less on a controllable side, although second wave came in, my everybody was there in the field to work, except some of the people, those who work from home, from the backend function. So that was there. Now we are also thinking that how are we going to engage in a different way, because the type of skills has changed, type of working has changed, right? So we need to come out certain program which we are in discussion, we are in discussing with the team members, that how we can provide a development program for the people, leadership development program. And the new skills which has come up, which is called critical decision making, leadership, remote working, how we see that we can get more productivity sitting at home, not barring 8 hours or 9 hours kind of a working. Because today people are saying, sir, I am delivering more productivity. Why you're delivering more productivity? Because you started working for 12 hours actually. Some of the people, the productivity to 1.5 guna aayegi. It's very simple, right? But how we wanted to see that how we can bring productivity working within that 8 hours. So those things we are going to bring very shortly for our individual employees.
Thank you for answering.
thank you so much, sir. I think we have overstepped a little bit on our time. So for all the other questions, maybe we can mail the panelists and we'll, if we get some answers, we'll circulate it among the students. So yes, Purva.
Right, Priyal. And we all would like to thank the panel of esteemed guests on taking out time from their busy schedule to be here amidst us on a Sunday. The panelists, through their years of research, depth of understanding, extensive experience, shared the best practices that are followed in the organizations. And the discussion, which involved insights on micro learning, leadership training programs, expected ROI, expectations from MBA graduates, and so much more. I believe all the students present here today have absorbed so much from the session, although we really hope that the session could be conducted offline. We would also like to thank Mr. Malik, who moderated the session and kept the flow of the conversation going. It is wishful thinking, but we hope to see all of you on IIM Kashipur campus soon for more engagements. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank
Thank
you,
you
Purva.
everyone for attending. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.